This woman runs the lives of 450 million Europeans. Not one of them voted for her. And her previous job? Delivering babies. How does a gynecologist end up commanding one of the largest military budgets on Earth? Stick around. It only gets stranger. This is the story of a woman who has spent her entire life delivering. First babies. Then regulations. Then tanks. Then 800 billion euros of firepower. Today an entire continent is her patient, and nobody remembers signing the consent form. We're going to walk through the whole chart, from the beginning. And I promise you, the beginning is already suspicious. Every empire needs an origin story. Hers begins in Brussels, in 1958, the future capital of the European Union. Convenient. Her father, Ernst Albrecht, wasn't just anyone. He was one of the very first European civil servants, before going home to run an entire German state for 14 years. So while other children were learning to ride bicycles, she was absorbing the family trade, running things nobody elected you to run. For her, politics wasn't a career. It was a hereditary condition. Then comes the part they leave out of the posters. At 19, a far-left terror group was reportedly planning to kidnap her. So she did what anyone would do, she vanished to London, under police protection, living under a fake name, Rose Ladson. Think about that. Before she ever delivered a single baby, she had already delivered something far more advanced, a brand new identity for herself. And she enrolled at the London School of Economics, as someone who, on paper, didn't exist. Remember that talent. It comes back. She studied economics. And then, out of absolutely nowhere, she switched to medicine. Her stated reason? She wanted, and I quote the spirit of it, more contact with people. Now, most people get more contact with people by talking to them. She chose obstetrics, which is contact with people at the exact moment they are screaming and cannot leave. And she was good at it. Suspiciously good. Because delivering things, it turns out, would become her life's entire brand. Her first real job was delivering babies. Bringing new life into the world, one tiny screaming European at a time. Doctors call it a calling. She, apparently, called it a warm-up. Because every baby she delivered was, technically, a future EU citizen. A future taxpayer. A future subject who would one day be governed by rules she personally wrote. She wasn't running a maternity ward. In hindsight, she was recruiting. And she had 7 children of her own, which is either devotion to family, or simply the most committed market research in European history. In 1991 she earned her doctorate. Years later, reviewers went through that thesis and flagged nearly half the pages for plagiarism. Her university investigated and reached a conclusion so perfectly bureaucratic it belongs in a museum. Yes, there was plagiarism, but no, they could not prove she meant to deceive. So she kept the title. Let that sink in. Her very first major delivery, and the original material was mysteriously missing. If only someone had noticed a pattern forming. Nobody did. Then she entered politics properly, and began to climb. Family minister. Labor minister. Every few years a bigger office, a bigger nameplate, a bigger budget. She was efficient, photogenic, and permanently on her way up. In most careers you climb the ladder one rung at a time. She didn't climb it. She delivered herself up it, smoothly, professionally, and always feet first into a more powerful room. And then, the promotion nobody had on their card. In 2013 she became Germany's Minister of Defense. The first woman ever to hold the job. From the maternity ward, to the war ministry. From delivering babies, to commanding tanks. From push, to fire. A perfectly natural progression, as long as you don't think about it for more than 1 second. The woman who had spent decades bringing life into the world was now in charge of the machinery for taking it back out. And here's the twist, the tanks turned out to be the easy part. Because running a defense ministry, it turns out, is mostly about money going somewhere. Take the Navy's grand old training sailboat. A tidy little refurbishment, budgeted at around 10 million euros. By the time the bills stopped arriving, it had reached roughly 135 million. For a sailboat. That is 13 times over budget on a vessel powered, fundamentally, by wind. She delivered many things in that ministry. On time and on budget was rarely one of them. Then there were the consultants. Her ministry handed out an estimated 250 million euros in contracts to outside advisory firms, the famous names, the expensive ones, with questions later raised about whether the paperwork and the tenders were entirely present. Parliament opened an inquiry. She said mistakes were made in the procedures, and that this was simply the price of reform. 250 million euros, delivered to consultants, to advise a ministry that already had a building full of people whose entire job was advice. And when that parliamentary inquiry came looking for answers, it reached for the obvious source, her official ministry phone. There was just one small problem. The data on it had been deleted. Wiped. Gone. Right in the middle of an investigation. Now, remember the fake name in London? The missing pages in the thesis? A theme is emerging, and the theme is this: whenever the record would be inconvenient, the record has a remarkable habit of not surviving. Hold that thought. You will need it very soon. 2019. Europe holds an election. Voters back lead candidates, each campaigning for the top job. And then, behind closed doors, in a single long night, the national leaders ignore all of them, and produce a name that had been on precisely nobody's ballot, hers. She had not campaigned for it. She had not been a lead candidate. The citizens found out the next morning, the way you find out about a surprise party, except the surprise is your new government. Parliament confirmed her by 9 votes. 9. Out of 450 million people, her mandate came down to a margin you could fit in a taxi. And with the top job came her favorite thing in the entire world, paperwork. The instinct never left her, she simply changed what she delivered. Now it was directives. Regulations. Green targets, digital rules, standards for the curvature of practically everything. If it could be printed, stamped, and made mandatory across 27 countries at once, she delivered it. The obstetrician had found a new kind of newborn, the 800-page regulation. And this one also arrived screaming. Her masterpiece was a trade deal with South America. Negotiations began in 1999 and reached agreement 25 years later. 25 years. That is not a trade deal, that is a pregnancy with serious commitment issues. Most humans conceived at the start of those talks are now old enough to have finished university and given up on the housing market. And when the deal finally arrived, she held it up to the cameras like a newborn. Because to her, it basically was one. Then came the biggest delivery of all, vaccines. During the pandemic she helped arrange a contract for 1.8 billion doses, one of the largest purchases in the history of the European Union. And a chunk of the groundwork, reportedly, happened in personal text messages between her and the head of the pharmaceutical company. So a journalist asked, very reasonably, to see those texts. And the texts could not be found. In 2025, Europe's own General Court ruled the Commission had failed to give a credible explanation for the missing messages. Not corruption, the court did not rule that. Just, officially, we cannot explain where they went. Which, by now, from this particular doctor, is basically her signature move. You would think a run like this might slow a person down. It did not. In 2024 they gave her the job again. A second term, re-elected, reconfirmed, reinstalled. This time she had technically campaigned for it, though the real decision, as ever, was stitched together by national leaders trading favors in a back room. 450 million people. A second 5-year term. And still, to this day, not one of them can remember placing the order. And now, the final escalation. The woman who began her career delivering babies is spending her second term delivering artillery. Her flagship plan, ReArm the continent, a defense push measured in the region of 800 billion euros. Read that again slowly. The obstetrician. 800 billion. For weapons. From push to pushing the entire continent onto a war footing. She has, at last, found the biggest thing a person can deliver, not a baby, not a directive, but the mood of an entire civilization. And so the doctor stands at the window and declares the old order, over. Because once you have trained as an obstetrician, you never really stop. You just keep finding bigger patients. First a baby. Then a ministry. Then a union of 27 countries. The whole continent is on her table now, sedated, regulated, and gently rearmed. She checks the monitors. She nods. And somewhere, quietly, another message is being deleted. The bill, of course, is in the mail. 450 million patients. 0 votes. 1 extremely confident doctor, and 1 phone with the memory of a goldfish. You may now schedule your follow-up appointment. It is mandatory. And do subscribe, it's not as if you voted for anything else today.